adage, you know, you can't love someone else till you love yourself. It's true.
Yeah.
It is true.
It's true.
And I'm not sure why I'm having this thought, given what you just said, Ann, but the thought is this. We're all needy. And somewhere along the way, being needy gets a bad rap. It's like it's a bad thing. And the reality is that I have needs to be nurtured and loved and cared for. And what we tend to do is enter into relationships as a zero-sum game. It's either
wait, what does zero-sum game mean?
If there are 100 units and I have 90 of them, there's only 10 left for you.
Okay, I just don't know what zero-sum, I don't understand what, anyway. I've always heard that, and I'm just like,
It's a fixed, there's a finite amount to be had.
Okay.
And you can have 50% of it, I can have 50% of it, but you can't have 60 and me 60 because there's just not enough there.
Okay.
So with respect to neediness, if I'm in a needy place and I come home and I say to my spouse, I need something, I need your attention, I need you to do whatever, and she's also in a needy place, typically that's where there's sparks that fly. Whereas if we can just acknowledge it's like, oh, we're both empty, let's be gentle with each other and acknowledge that we're both empty. I mean, it's that simple. But we're not acculturated to do that. It's like me, you talked a lot in the opening comments of this section about competition and who's in charge. And just that mental model itself creates this dynamic of banging heads a lot.
Yeah, well, my motto is love and let live. I try to practice that, but you know, the business of, if someone's too tired at the end of the day to have a conversation with you and you need to talk to them, that's where it's like, oh, how can I understand a little bit about what they need and maybe realize I can wait to have that conversation.
There's a great book called Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendrix, who's the founder of Imago Couples Therapy. And basically that's what he's talking about. You will get what you need from somebody else when you take the time to recognize what they need and give it to them in order for them to feel safe enough that then they're willing to come out and give you what you need. And when I'm practicing that, it's great. But as soon as my needy meter hits too far and I'm like, no, I don't care, that's what I need, it's not going to work. It's going to drive the other person
Right, I
away.
actually heard him speak, and he was talking about, though it's not a couple's relationship, a relationship with a person and his mother. And he was saying that his mother was really needy and, you know, just always wanted to be talking to him on the phone, wanting to know what's going on with him, calling all the time. And, oh, she's so needy, I can't take it. I just don't want to deal with her, don't want to deal with her. And, you know, and he was teaching this guy that if he actually made an effort to call his mother regularly and just listen for, you know, a short period of time, that the next day or next week she's not going to be doing that.
Well,
she's not going to need it as much.
Doesn't this get back to Don's point about empathy? And it sounds like the idea is to teach ourselves empathy, and partly to teach our partners how to be empathetic towards us in the interest of building trust. Because that's what Nicole was also talking about, was, you know, trust. If you don't trust the person gets you or will work with you or will cut you some slack, then you're going to be on the defensive all the time, and that's no way to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
And if I could, I'm going to take it back to the bad call on the perfect game. What was expressed there, my interpretation of what was expressed there, was an understanding that there's a human being. The umpire was a human being that simply made a mistake. It wasn't that he was out to get him. It wasn't that he was out to get the team. It wasn't that he was out to mess up the statistics. He just made a human error in the moment, and that grace was given him. His humanity was granted to him in that moment, and then they went away, and there was no rancor about it.
Well, it's because he took responsibility as well. You know, he didn't try to shove it and point, like you were saying in another segment, point the finger at somebody else. He said, this was my mistake, I did it, and that kind of dissipates the anger.
Yeah, where do you go from there?
And there's where we get the link between sports and relationships. How many of us in our relationships will cut the other person some slack when they make a mistake? You know, and how many of us will have the grace to, you know, let it go? And that's why we're here today with Red Zone Politics. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back and look really quickly, speaking of age and where people are at, we're actually going to look at the concept of ageism. I'm A.F. Cook. You're with Red Zone Politics. We're back for our final segment of the show today on relationships. And there was a recent German study that came out that sort of really presented a picture of, I think, the worst double standard ever. I happen to like guys who are a little younger than me sometimes. And some people would call me a cougar. which is kind of a cool animal. It's like a big cat, you know, kind of furry and friendly and a little fierce. Anyway, you know, Demi Moore's a cougar. What's not to like about that? There's plenty of older women dating younger men or marrying them, and it seems to be kind of more acceptable these days than maybe it used to. However, of course, Fox News, for some reason, has to come out with this really bad news. A German study that was conducted that looked at couples in Holland, 2 million couples, found that cougars die young compared to women who were not cougars, who were married to men their own age or older. And so on first glance, you're like, well, why is that? Well, apparently the main reason is that the younger woman will take care of their older husband into old age, but the younger men will not necessarily do the same for the women. Now, I think that's really sad.
Is this a controlled study?
I don't know what kind of study it was, but I just, you know, again, it was in Holland, it wasn't everywhere, but to me, that's a very interesting kind of sad statement. But it also speaks to maybe women being more naturally trained to nurture, to think about nurturing, you know, people, and maybe men not being trained that way so much. I don't know. Any thoughts on that study? Mm-hmm. What?
Get a contract that stipulates that if he doesn't stick around and take care of you, that he's out.
Well, that'll solve the problem.
Like when? Yeah, that'll really solve it.
Don, you must have a better thought.
Like murder? Are they murdering him for more money?
No, I just think people aren't sticking around when people get older. You know, if someone's 10 or 12 years older than you, and you know, they need, I don't know, they need some kind of support, and you're still, I don't know, you still want to be active, and maybe they're not as active as you. I guess that could be an issue.
I feel like it's a more evolved thing for a younger man to, like, I feel like the man must be slightly more evolved to pick an older woman. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not true, but I feel like if he's willing to do that, he may be more willing to take care, but apparently not.
It should be true. Well, it's not in Holland. Anyway.
Thanks for that sad news.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, on a downer note. But I actually don't believe the study. You know, it's in Holland. I mean, what do they know over in Holland? We're going to talk about another effect on relationships, which is our work life. This culture in general, and arguably this area, the DC metro area in particular, is rife with workaholism. People's jobs can overtake their lives to the point where if they're single, they don't have time to get involved with somebody. If they're married, it can affect the quality of the relationship and lead to problems in the marriage. And, you know, several of our guests here at least have worked with sort of executive level management, family management, and I'm sure that work-life balance for individuals, and especially as far as it affects their life at home, comes into the equation. Don, what do you have to say about this topic? Because I think it's sort of a trend, and it just seems to me that it's really an issue these days.
Absolutely, Ann, and we don't have enough time for me to tell you exactly what I think about all this, because I've done a lot of work and a lot of research on this. The short version of the story, though, is that for the first time in the history of mankind in the last 100 years, we have the luxury of time on our hands. We're not out in the fields making sure that we have food for the winter, and we're not about putting a roof on our head. And we've not yet developed the tools to be comfortable with ourselves. We look in the mirror and we don't know who we are.
Are you saying we don't know how to spend our leisure time, and so we put it in work when we don't have to work that many hours?
Absolutely.
Really?
We either overwork, overdrug, oversex, overspend, overmake, fill in the blank.
Over.
I don't want to be with me because I don't know how to be with me. And the most common call that I get from working as an executive coach is, Don, my kids are launched, I've got money in the bank, my marriage is okay, my career's okay, and I wake up every morning and I've got this hole in me that is excruciating because I have no idea who I am. Because if you peel away, I'm the vice president or I'm the whatever your role is, and it's like, who am I as a human being? Most of us don't know.
Well, how old are they? They must be, I mean, that sounds pretty scary if you have the perspective of not being able to address that hole, and you know, we're living longer these days. I mean, I would think that would be a pretty scary prospect to just, how do I be happy for the rest of my life?
Yep, it's terrifying. It's mostly folks in their mid-40s and up that I get calls from.
Okay.
And the journey, for those that choose to, the journey that they embark on is a journey of self-discovery. And in fairly short order, they can get comfortable in their own skin, and they live rich and full and fulfilling lives. Most of it's about giving back.